call the Valentine's meeting of the Common Council to order on February 13th at 7 p.m. Please stand as you are able as Dave Johnson leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Lees, will you call the roll?
Mr. Boyce?
Present.
Mr. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Elliott?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Schwartz?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Thurston?
Present.
Ms. Wiles?
Present.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. President, you have quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, January 23rd?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 8 and 0 and 1. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve our agenda. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Petitions or comments by citizens who are present. I don't have any cards, but if anybody would like to say anything, there are white cards out front. You can fill those out and hand them to our clerk. Mayor's comments. Mr. Mayor, would you like to make some comments and make an introduction?
Went awfully quick on that agenda. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Yes, I'll be brief. I had a chance this morning, along with our controller, Jeff Spalding, to be down at the State House. As you know, our good friends at the General Assembly are in the middle of their short session, and we are working with them on one that we are majorly working on is Senate Bill 10, which I know I've talked to you all about before. It's basically taking our local Noble Act program, our paramedicine program, and working with cities across the state and asking the state to incentivize with some grant funding. That passed unanimously out of the House committee this morning. I really appreciate my friend Senator Scott Baldwin for helping shepherd us through that. I also want to thank Jeff Spalding for testifying today on House Bill 1120. There are several issues within or opportunities within House Bill 1120 for discussion, and Jeff Spalding and his expertise struck a great chord involving max levy appeal. And if you want to talk with him offline about that, I'm sure he'd be love to educate you on that, as he did the House committee today on that bill and the Senate bill as well. But with that, I want to just thank our legislators for all that they do down at the State House or not do to better the lives of Hoosiers. And with that, I know my good friend Senator Scott Baldwin is here, and he would love to give you an update. So I'm going to yield the remainder of my time to my friend Senator Scott Baldwin.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to speak. Council members. The mayor I'm sure he's informed you about Senate Bill 10, but let me give you just a little bit more context. I can't tell you how proud I am, and I don't want his head to swell too much, but Noblesville is a leader. And the Noble Act program is very successful. You all know that. You own it. And you're living it. You're seeing the results of the Noble Act program. And for our community, I can't tell you how proud I am for us to decide that this is something we should take statewide. And it was really above and beyond for Noblesville to be able to do that and take this leadership position in the state of Indiana. And beyond that, as well, our mayor has been very engaged. And when I say engaged, not just call your legislator and, hey, could you draft a bill to do something? He's been down there multiple times and helping me whip committees, helping me ensure that we have votes, helping me add people as co-authors and sponsors and co-sponsors, helping me work with, single-handedly working with FSSA and the Department of Homeland Security, and single-handedly legislating this bill. I really was just an author and helped whip the communities and provided some sales advice from time to time, but our mayor took the lead on that. And so not only is Noblesville a leader, but our mayor's a leader statewide, and I just want to make sure everybody understood the context of that. And, the results of Senate Bill 10, once enacted, and if we can convince people to take advantage of it, are going to be resounding. getting people the help that they need is going to result in better lives, saved lives, less infrastructure cost, less cost to the state, less cost to locals, and just a better life for Hoosiers. So there's everything right about Senate Bill 10, and it is my key piece of legislation that the mayor has handed me this year, and so I just want to thank him for that. Having said that, there were 1,500 other great ideas this year. And I will say that Mr. Jeff Spalding did testify today in the Tax and Fiscal Committee. I'm the ranking member down there with Senator Holdman as the chairman. And I'll just tell you, I'm not going to speak for our chairman, but I would say that we are having ongoing dialogue about whether it will be a scalpel or hatchet to fix 1120 and 1121, both of which heavily get into tax and local government and school funding and a variety of the topics that brought out 30 or 40 fans of the bill to comment about it for 2 or 3 hours this morning. And so I'll give you, as I've done in the past 4 years, a quick breakdown, and I'll try to be brief, Mr. President. The number of bills introduced in the Senate were 297. They got introduced, right? I mean, there were a lot of great ideas, but 297 bills were introduced. 110 of them were passed. We pared it down pretty significantly, 37% of the introduced bills. The number that were passed with unanimous support, I say this every year to punctuate, 58% of bills were unanimous. And 97 of them, or 88% of the bills, were bipartisan. You don't hear that on the news media. We work hard together down there, and it's not as partisan as you think oftentimes. We're all working for Hoosiers. The number of House bills coming to the Senate in the second half is 110. They seem to do a good job of restraining themselves better than the Senate this year. So the things that we don't do, we need to don't do them better. So there are 10 noteworthy bills. When I say noteworthy, don't translate that to good. These are 10 noteworthy bills. One of them improves reading skills for young Hoosiers. That's its goal anyway. I would say I would call that a good one. Providing some affordability for child care access. Again, I think it's a noble effort. Responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars, basically is money laying around in counts in the state of Indiana that weren't necessarily monitored in a way that we would like for them to be monitored, and so we're going to have those go back to the general fund just to be better for our taxpayers. Replacing unsafe lead and water lines. There's strengthening Indiana's sanctuary city ban. Free expression and inquiry on college campuses. This is an effort because of a lot of constituents are reaching out, concerned that colleges' actions and views are not consistent with Hoosier values, and so that was the impetus for that particular bill. Limiting the length of emergency declarations, reining in costly agency regulations, and then there's another wetlands bill this year. And then there's a 13th check conversation predominantly affecting teachers and others. So we got some upcoming bills coming from the House, and there'll be more great ideas, and I'll try to come back in and give you guys an update. But with that, I'll end my presentation and ask if there's any questions that you have of me as your servant.
Any questions?
Mr. President, I don't have a question, but more a comment. Thank you, Senator Baldwin, for coming and being with us this evening and giving us this update. It's always nice to see you here.
Thanks, Megan.
And for your hard work at making sure not much happens down there.
Right. Your mayor makes certain I hear that. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
On to our committee reports. Roads, Pete Schwartz.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. The Roads Committee met February 2nd. Present was Darren Peterson, Todd Thurston, and myself. A lot of the discussion was on the ongoing projects that was discussed last meeting and reported. Just kind of reiterate, Pleasant Street Phase 2 and Phase 3 are going along nicely. Expect a full closure of Pleasant Street from 19th Street to 10th Street. And then looking forward in 2025, full closure of State Road 32. Also, I'd like to mention Little Chicago Road Trail over Morris Lake. Project that's going to start very soon. Look for signals to be put up, let's see, March 1st. And That's when the restrictions will take place. Also, it was discussed the trail going from Federal Hill Park to Forest Park. There's going to be some construction going there to create a trail that will go underneath the railroad and connect the two parks. And that's about it.
Thank you. Any questions? Finance Committee, Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met February 8th. Dave Johnson, Aaron Smith, Megan Wiles, and myself. Ian Zolgowski and Chuck Hagerman discussed the fiscal action for the Economic Development Manager position. Patty Johnson discussed with us a fiscal action for a salt barn roof replacement. Caitlin Moss talked to us about year-end 2023 encumbrance carry-forward report. And Jess Baldwin talked to us about the Fire Cumulative Capital Fund tax rate for pay 2025. Jeff also talked to us about the reestablished city investment policies. And Ian came back and talked to us about quarterly fiscal reports for quarter 4, 2023. And Caitlin gave us an update on investments, the tracking report, and then also the negative fund balance tracking report. That and the claims docket comes to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the claims as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the claims. As a hand vote, all those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. 9-0, it's approved. Previously discussed ordinances. Council to consider ordinance 020124 and ordinance amending the traffic schedules in chapter 72 and 78 of the Code of Ordinances. Andrew Rodewald.
Good evening. As discussed at your previous meeting, this is, the majority of this amendment is an annual update to traffic code for new roads that have been constructed throughout the city. So updating the new intersection, traffic control, speed limits, et cetera. The one significant change is that of addition of 7213, which would codify no parking in front of mailboxes, 10 feet either side of those. Believe it or not, that had not been previously in code, so it was left up to neighbors to be good neighbors. So now that gives police department a mechanism when neighbors don't want to be good neighbors anymore. So with that, I'd recommend approval of the ordinance and entertain any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve ordinance number 02-01-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve the ordinance and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Thurston?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
9 ayes, 0 nay, the ordinance is approved.
Moving on to new ordinances for discussion. Council to consider ordinance 030224, an ordinance to reestablish the Fire Cumulative Capital Fund tax rate and establish a public hearing.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Jeff Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller, and as was presented in the Finance Committee, this is, we always have a lot of routine actions before your body, and this is another one of those. And at its core, basically, it's reestablishing us to a position at the beginning of the budget year for 2025 so that we have maximum flexibility on how we set our Fire Cumulative Capital Fund tax rate. And basically, the way this works is that there is a maximum rate established in state law, but if you adopt a rate that is less than that, which we have been doing in the last few years, then that state law automatically resets your community's maximum rate to the rate you adopted the previous year, even though the state maximum rate is higher. So you have to come back with this action at the beginning of the year to say, hey, we want the flexibility to reconsider what this rate would be. So that maximum rate is 3.33 cents, and this is just basically resetting it to 3.33 cents when we start the budget process. We may not set it there, we probably won't set it there, but this gives us the flexibility to do that. And happy to take any questions.
Historically, what has the rate been?
Well, historically, the last few years around, last year, or for this year and the previous year, 2.7 cents, and the year before that, I think it was 2 cents.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would move that we establish a public hearing for ordinance number 03-02-24 for the March 12th meeting.
Second.
There's a motion to establish a public hearing for the March 12th meeting in a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. On to the next item. Council to consider ordinance 040224, an ordinance authorizing the investment of public funds pursuant to IC 513-9-5.7.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Jeff Spalding.
All right, again, I am Jeff Spalding again. This bill, it's one of three that work together, this item, one of three that work together. Two of them are resolutions and one of them is an ordinance. And if you wanted to think about them in order, of the three, this would probably be the second one that you would think of, and I could explain that. But because it has to be done by ordinance, we're moving it first, and the other two will come along as resolutions at the next meeting. They'll all be adopted at the same time. But basically what this is one aspect of reestablishing the city's investment policy is, again, to provide maximum flexibility for investment options. The council has to take a specific action, which is this, to allow a portion of the portfolio to be invested in investment instruments of 2 to 5 years in duration. Without this action, the longest duration instrument we could invest in would be a 2-year, up to 2 years, based on the underlying statute. But with a specific action by the fiscal body, it says you can take a part of your portfolio and invest it a little longer term for higher interest rate if you want to do that. So that's what this action does.
Thank you. We don't need to vote on this. Are there any questions? Thank you. Proposed development presentation. Council to hear introductory information for a preliminary development plan for towns at 238, a proposed townhomes project on the north side of Greenfield Avenue, east of Promise Road. John Dobashewitz. Did I say that right? Dobashewitz?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Good evening, members of council. For the record, my name is John Dobashewitz. I'm a land use professional with the law firm of Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, MI Homes of Indiana LP. Jonathan Isaacs with MI is present this evening, as well as Jim Schinner, an attorney with our office. As noted, the request before you this evening is a development proposal which seeks to rezone the real estate to a PD entitled the Towns on 238 Planned Development Ordinance. Rezone approval will facilitate the development of a for-sale townhome community on the real estate. The subject real estate is on display currently, and it's outlined in yellow. It includes approximately 27 acres. It's located north of and adjacent to Greenfield Avenue, east of and adjacent to Promise Road, and south of and adjacent to 156th Street. Uses which surround the real estate include individual homes to our west on the west side of Promise Road. To the northwest is the Chapel Villas two-family dwelling community. North is Chapel Woods subdivision. Northeast is the Brook Farms community currently under development. And to our south are the Waterman Farms neighborhood and Meredith Meadows senior apartments, generally to the southwest. The Towns on 238 community will consist of approximately 190 townhomes as depicted here on the concept plan. The community will also include open space and common areas, including a centrally located park and separate dog park for use by residents within the community. Access to the subdivision will be off of Greenfield Avenue as well as 156th Street to the north. The townhomes located immediately adjacent to Greenfield Avenue, and all those illustrated in orange on the concept plan, will be 3-story designs with the front facing toward these roadways, with parking in the rear accessed via internal alleys. Townhomes illustrated in pink on the concept plan are 2 stories in height and have garages which are accessed via the internal streets. All garages will face internally and none towards those perimeter streets that I mentioned, Greenfield, 156th, and Promise Road. Further landscape buffer yards are provided surrounding the site as shown on this plan. As I indicated, there are 2 townhome product types. One, the 2-story design on the top of the image, and the other 3-story design at the bottom illustration. MI Homes is proposing its suburban townhome series, which range from between approximately 1,500 square feet and just over 2,000 square feet, with anticipated price ranges between $290,000 and $350,000, depending on those units and the size of those units. As a side note, this home product is currently under construction along the south side of State Road 32, just west of Gray Road, in the Bonterra community. This next exhibit provides some photographs of the 2-story product. The architectural utilizes a modern farmhouse style with white siding and brick, along with bronze window trim. Additional items to note would be that all townhomes within the community would have a 2-car attached garage, room in the driveway for 2 additional vehicles to be parked, as well as additional guest parking provided in several locations in the addition, as well as to some limited areas of on-street parking. This next exhibit includes photographs at the top, and then we didn't have any photographs yet of the side and rear elevations. We'll bring those to the Plan Commission. As shown, attention has been paid to incorporating design elements typically only applied to the front elevations on both the side and the rear of the townhomes. This includes material variations, horizontal siding and vertical siding, all of which will be hardy plank. There's no vinyl in the community. Masonry is included on all home elevations, both the front and side and rear elevations of all the buildings will include masonry. And roofline treatments specifically, as you can see in those illustrations, are incorporated on the side and rear elevations of the dwellings to provide enhanced aesthetics throughout the community. These are not just those that are most visible from the exterior of the community or internally. It would be all buildings within, all townhomes within the development would be applied the same high architectural standards. Regarding amenities, amenities are provided internal, as I indicated, a centrally located park space. The circle on the plan on the bottom right-hand side shows the location of the internal park space. It would include an outdoor pavilion, playground, and seating areas, and is centrally located through the community, connected with internal sidewalks to all homes within the development. This last illustration that we have to share is also of a dog park. It's identified with the circle that you see on the plan. Along our east perimeter. It includes fencing, play equipment, as well as landscaping, and is all required. All those amenities are required per the terms of the PD. So what we're showing the Plan Commission and Council for consideration is what would be constructed along with the dwellings on the real estate. In conclusion, we look forward to additional feedback. I know we've sent out information to all council members, have met with 4 individually so far, and would welcome additional feedback either this evening or in advance of or after our Plan Commission consideration. That consideration of the Plan Commission is scheduled for March 18th. And in addition, we have a neighborhood meeting that we've scheduled for March 7th. Once we send out notice to surrounding owners of that neighborhood meeting, we'll copy that to planning staff and forward it on to council as well if you're interested in attending. I want to thank you for your time this evening. Again, look forward to additional feedback and returning back to the council once the Plan Commission holds its public hearing and makes a recommendation on consideration for the council. Likely to occur for the public's benefit sometime April-ish, depending on the timing of consideration by Plan Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Dobashewitz? Mr. Woods?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. And I'm sorry in advance, Mr. Dobashewitz, because I feel like I've given you these numbers a couple times, and feel like you're gonna have a hitman out on me sometime soon. But Caleb was kind enough to get me the numbers for everyone, just so you know. We have 3,848 multifamily and/or duplexes that are approved right now in the city that are not built. And if you add that on to things like the Levinson and Lexus and those things, then that's around 5,000 units that will have been built in the last couple years and that are already approved and will be built in the next few years. And I am the first one to say, I think we are going to need more multifamily in the future in some way, someday, but I just personally am nervous about our ability as a city to keep up with regards to infrastructure, public safety, and everything else. When you look at we were a 70,000 person community just a few years ago, and this is 5,000 apartment and multifamily units being built in just a few years. That's a pretty big jump in my opinion, especially when you look at like our own city data shows that we're 39% more calls per single unit for public safety than for a single home. So I know that we are going to need these more multifamily as it goes forward, but I don't think we want to put the brakes on, but I definitely think that we need to start thinking about slowing down a little bit and coasting because, and making sure that we can keep up with regards to infrastructure, public safety and everything, because I do have a lot of concerns there, so.
I appreciate that. We'll ask planning staff and Caleb in particular to break that down, not only when you mentioned multifamily, the distinction here that it's for sale individual fee simple lots with townhome dwellings. The distinction in the UDO and the zoning ordinance would be that we're in a parallel with multifamily, even though it's not multifamily for rent traditional apartments. The classification in the zoning ordinance and definitions lump us into that category. So I think it would be beneficial. We'll ask Caleb if he can break that down between traditional multifamily, fee simple for sale townhomes, and then the duplexes, so they can have a better understanding, as well as the council. We'll ask him to get that back to the council via email, so that everybody can see the distinction there.
I think also too, our housing study for years, we've hammered on the missing middle, and I feel like this fits in that category of somewhere between apartments and homes. So that has been the niche we've needed, and I think this fits that general concept of missing middle.
Well, and on that point too, this is an infill product too, where there's development, around here. So I think that helps from an infrastructure perspective as well. Yeah, and I think that.
And the area, while it's not, I think this is I wouldn't call it an older area. It's about a year old. I think the parcel to the east is under development currently today. It's not fully built out. But I think that has is it commercial use? It's a commercial use to our east.
Yep. Going back to that the color coded map, are the yellow ones the rear load?
The yellow are the alley fed. So if you see the narrow band between those two rows of dwellings, that's the alley.
Yeah.
And the alley would be off the rear of the dwelling, and the front facing would be the 3 stories with the front door facing the street. So
Okay.
Internally, I may have mentioned it, everything on the plan is front doors facing front doors. There's occasionally a situation where a front door may face the side of another home when you're on a curve there.
Yep.
But all throughout the development, garage doors are relegated internally. So you're not seeing those as you're driving 151st or Promise, rather 156th Street. And no one is coming out their front door in the community facing someone else's rear of their dwelling, if you will.
And I appreciate that's not necessarily the case either coming into the communities as well.
So the alleys are private and the streets are all public?
That is the plan.
And are the streets wide enough to park a car on one side or the other?
They are, but we're going to modify things so that parking is only permitted on street in certain locations, not across from people's driveways. I know you just adopted an ordinance tonight regarding mailboxes. That situation shouldn't present itself here because I'm sure the council's aware all new developments within Noblesville, based upon requirements for the U.S. Postal Service, require combined mailbox facilities. We'll locate those internally on the site in specific locations. I think they're relegated between 6 and 16 homes have to be combined. Those will be sporadically located throughout the development and will not allow parking in front of those situations.
And the driveways are deep enough to park a car, not hanging over the sidewalk?
They are. There'll be the right-of-way, which would include the sidewalk, and then beyond the sidewalk, there'll be a minimum of 20 feet, until you get to the closest dwelling, so there won't be a situation where you'd have, you would have adequate room for people to park outside, not block the sidewalks, but also that's in addition to the 2 spaces in the garage.
So 4 total, plus on-street parking. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Any questions for Mr. Isaacs, since he came all this way? Thank you.
Thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Council to consider Resolution RC 4-24, a resolution authorizing the carry forward of encumbrances from the prior budget year. Caitlin Moss.
Hi, Caitlin Moss, Deputy Controller. This is a resolution that we bring forward every year in order to carry forward encumbrances that were encumbered in last year's budget but have not yet been paid for any number of reasons. And so we've listed them out based on your budgetary control at department, subfund, and expenditure series. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? No questions? Okay,
Mr. President,
yes.
I would move that we approve Resolution RC-4-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve the resolution and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. I know. Thank you. Council to consider Resolution RC 524, a resolution approving the Noblesville Towards Zero plan. Andrew Rodewald.
So before I get into the specifics of the resolution, just a little background of how we got to this point. About a year ago, the city was awarded a grant from Federal Highway Administration as part of their Safe Streets and Roads for All SS4A program. So that's a nationwide grant. We submitted in 2022, received in 2023. We were one of only 10 communities in the state of Indiana to receive funding for that. And that was the first call that DOT had put out, brand new grant program. So that was exciting in and of itself that Noblesville was able to participate in that. That funding was for the creation of what's called a safety action plan. They have 2 different types of funding, which will come into play at the end of this, but one does an action plan, one does an implementation, which is actual construction of a project. So these action plans, their purpose and goal is to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries on roadway networks. So Federal Highway has a Vision Zero program that they use, Vision Zero Towards Zero. Same concept. You've probably seen some of DOT's ads on the TV. They've put out a lot of that in the last few years. So we have been started that program in the fall, have had several open houses for the public, have had online tools for public to interact and say areas that they see safety issues, where they think improvements could be made. We've put a particular focus on our downtown area, as pedestrian safety is a huge component of this. So this is not just car on car type collisions. This is everybody on our transportation network that, again, we see that as all of our trails and sidewalks and roadways. So after gathering all of that public input, our consultants also been looking at a lot of the data, historical crash data, looking at what our policies are. They've done a lot of interviews with public safety, with schools, with various departments, different civic groups around the city, trying to see how they use the roadway network and what those components could look like in this action plan. So fast forward to today, one major component for the city as part of our requirement for the grant is that we enact a Towards Zero or Vision Zero resolution. So you as a body acting on behalf of the city are pledging your commitment that fatalities are not inevitable. We have a role in that. That doesn't just mean roadway geometry. That means our public safety response times. That means education within the schools. That means whatever types of public outreach. So that plan will give us a lot of those tools that then you as a council can help us move forward. So there is a commitment in there of moving towards 0 fatalities by the year 2050. Noblesville has thankfully been averaging about 3 for the last 5 years that we've looked at it. And as our population growth has increased, that we've talked about already this evening, that number has stayed fairly consistent, which I think is a credit to your governance and putting those funding sources for projects, for different resources, so we can keep that there, and as our growth continues, we can continue to drop that down. So I would recommend to approve this resolution towards 0 for the city.
Any questions?
No question, I'll make a statement. I've been at a couple of the open houses. I've actually got the online tool and filled it out and got feedback. And if you haven't been to one, go. They really do listen. And I've seen good input, public feedback. A lot of folks on bikes have showed up to get a lot of feedback back to the committee as they're trying to figure out the best ways to make things safer for Noblesville. I think it's a good program.
Where can we find those online tools?
I got it via email.
What's that?
I got it via email.
Yeah, so the
Where can the
online,
public-
the tools, the survey ended so that they could get their data collected, but we'll be putting out with our 3rd open house here at the end of the month when we get our draft report. We're going to do instead of a traditional open house, we'll do an online type of presentation where we can show some of the results of the plan and where our high injury network is, where different project, at least at the draft stage, where those would be.
And they always have cookies, too.
We get committed to that usually the Friday before the meeting.
And since they're online, I guess that now means the cookies are in your pantry, right?
Yeah.
They'll be shipped. Any other questions?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that we approve Resolution RC-5-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the resolution. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council to consider transfer TA 0124, an appropriation transfer in the general fund to provide additional funding for a new economic development position. Ian Zakowski.
Yes, good evening, Ian Zolgowski, Deputy Financial Officer for the city. So in front of you is a fiscal action requesting a transfer of $7,008 from our personal services contingency to the Department of Economic Development. As part of their 2024 budget request, they had an open position for a economic development manager. Upon posting that job, it appeared that due to market conditions, they were not attracting the level of talent that they were looking for, and so desperately needed to support them in the level of work that they were doing. So they are simply asking for a slight increase in the salary of that position. It is still within the overall salary ordinance of that position, and it does not increase the 2024 budget for the city, since we are just using the non-departmental contingency for that.
Since Mr. Haberman came all this way, could you tell us a little bit about the position, kind of describe what the duties and responsibilities are? Thank you.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I am Chuck Haberman, Assistant Director of Economic Development. The position is really, our intent is to cross-train this person to be kind of a generalist, but they will be primarily taking over some of the responsibilities that we had previously outsourced in regards to marketing. You may recall some of the efforts that we've done with our partners in Blue Sky. We're in a maintaining stage and implementation stage, so a lot of those dollars were spent to build resources for our team to do these things internally. And so adding this person will enable us to utilize all those tools and resources that we've built over the last 2 years.
Thank you. Any questions? If there-
Mr. President, I would move that we approve transfer TA-01-24.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the transfer. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you. Council to consider transfer TA 0224, an appropriation transfer in the general fund to provide funding for a salt barn roof replacement. Ian Zagowski.
Yes, thank you. So this is a transfer that exists solely within the street department. They're asking for a transfer of budget authority from their 300 series to their 400 series in the amount of $35,000. This was a capital expense that was initially budgeted for 2023 to replace an aging roof on one of the salt barns. The level of salt never came down to an amount that would allow them to do that work in 2023. Finally, in 2024, they're able to start the work on that. And not only was there savings from not spending that $35,000 in 2023, the street department has actually identified some money that they had appropriated for snow plowing expenses that they are utilizing now to replace the roof on the salt barn. So similar strategic purpose of keeping the roads clear of snow and ice, but very crafty of them to identify where they could get that $35,000 from.
So technically, rather than carry forward, we let it revert, and now we're just reappropriating, sort of. Mr. Boyce.
It didn't specify where. Is this the salt barn that's over by Promise Road? It can't be the new one out on the east side.
West side salt barn?
Okay.
Yeah.
The west side then, okay, thank you. I knew it couldn't be the east one. That's almost new.
Any other questions? Nope.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve transfer TA-02-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the transfer. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any council comments? Council comments? Going once. No comments, we are adjourned.